All right, legends, welcome back to the Mason Cox Show. Today, big guest, massive guest, not physically, but also from his athletic ability. We've got one of the great athletes of Australia. Give you a little background. He's from Geelong Grammar. He is a somewhat Melbourne-based fella. He's played at St. Mary's with some of the top players. He's playing with people like Kevin Durant. Yes, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, a few of the superstars of the NBA at the moment. He is an Australian at heart, born and bred, but now living over in Phoenix, Arizona. He's got even an NBL championship. He's got a whole bunch of stuff we'll go through, but he is a great man. And he's now joining us on the pod. Jock Landale, welcome.
Thanks for having me, mate. That was a heck of an intro.
We've got plenty to cover because there's a lot of stuff you've done. There's a lot of accomplishments you've had. And I feel like a lot of these Australians that go to the NBA do it in a similar style that you have. So I want to get a bit of a background information of how this happens. Because some people just think a click of a finger, somehow you go to St. Mary's and you end up in the NBA. That's not how it goes. Now we're going to start off a bit of early days. Geelong Grammar, going to school out there. How was it? Were you a basketball superstar growing up, or was it just something you grew into? Because I know you grew like myself. I grew about 8 inches in a summer, and I think you grew about a foot in about 3 years. So us tall people, we just kind of have that one moment. It just kind of goes nuts. Tell us about Geelong Grammar growing up. Were you a basketball superstar?
Not in the slightest, mate. I didn't really take it too seriously until I was like 15 years old, and the way I got into it was I broke my arm. I broke my arm when I was up at Timbertop, which is a campus for Geelong Grammar where you go up there and you hike all these mountains for a full year. You run through the mountains for a full year. It's madness. And I snapped my arm pretty severely on the last day of skiing, which is part of our curriculum up there. And when I went and had some X-rays and saw a surgeon, and bloke pretty much told me that I had growth plates in my wrist that were wide open and looked like I was about a 5-year-old. So at that point, I was like 6'1", 15 years old. And he was like, we'd been told I was probably going to be like 6'3", as they try and estimate. I don't even know how they do that when you're young. And took one look at him and he was like, yeah, no, you'll probably be around 7 foot. So at that point, we were like, right, what do I do with this height? Geelong Grammar they have no high school basketball team. The extent of basketball was just club sports on the weekend, and that was really it. So yeah, not a superstar in the slightest.
You just kind of grew in. Is it one of those things? I guess there's not too many 7-footers really rolling around Geelong Grammar, so they just kind of threw you in the center spot and was like, "We'll teach this kid how to play basketball. He's got something you can't teach, and that's height." I wouldn't be playing AFL. It wasn't for me being freakishly tall, and I don't think you'd probably be playing in the NBA. No offense, mate, if you weren't the same height. So, a bit of God-given talent is what they say. But so you started. You were center probably for Geelong Grammar, I'm guessing. Now, was there kind of success around that? Like, obviously, you're in high school, and then you go to St. Mary's. Now, I know Delvedova. Everyone knows Matthew Delvedova, and he played to St. Mary's also. Is there some kind of weird connection that like they just automatically find all the Australians and send them to the same place to be able to play college ball?
Yeah, mate. So that started off with a bloke by the name of Adam Capehorn back in like 2003, where he was the first Aussie to go out there, and they just loved how tough he was and how hard he played, and they committed to just like poaching Aussies out of there for college basketball. And at that point, not many people had come to America for college hoops, and they just kind of, got a shoe in Australia and became, for Americans, the ideal thing is to go to Duke, Kentucky, all of those North Carolinas of the college system. And for Australians, it became St. Mary's. And it was just because of the success that was kind of bred out of that. Once we had Patty Mills go through there and get drafted to the NBA, it was like, right, every Australian just wants to go there. So, I lucked out big time in my recruiting process. I was literally watching a mate play for them because they come out to Australia and do like a college tour and play against some NBL teams and stuff. And at that point, I had no college interest whatsoever. So I was literally walking across the court to go and say good day to him after the game. And the coaches saw me and they said, right, like, who's this big fella? Like, we need to go and check him out. 2 weeks later, I'm down at the high school, and again, like Geelong Grammar didn't have a high school team, so I picked 9 of my mates, and I just said, fellas, like, I've got this crazy opportunity. These idiots are coming to check me out and see if I'm any good at basketball. Like, can we just like put together a little scrimmage for them and pretend that we've got a high school team? So I rock up with these blokes, and we run through like a full like scrimmage right in front of this coach. And the coach, the story is the coach calls back to St. Mary's and he's like, I think he's okay, but I can't really tell because he's playing against like a bunch of 5'3" blokes that he looks like he's just picked up off the side of the road. Uh, next minute I'm on a flight out to St. Mary's for like an official visit. Anyway, I get there, somehow impress them, and I was literally so unfit that we were doing like an open court scrimmage. I couldn't get up. I couldn't get up halfway up the court by the end of the day, and from that somehow they pulled me into the office and they said, "We like your touch. We like how you move." Even though I wasn't really moving too far, we want to offer you a scholarship. And I just said, "Yep, I'll take it." Like, done. That was it. Like,
Wow.
walked in the room, said, "Yep, I'm going to St. Mary's," and that was it. I had no other options whatsoever. So,
Well, I mean,
that's kinda how that unfolded.
did you already mentally prepare yourself to want to move to America to play college ball?
Yeah, like I'd started sitting SATs, and I knew that was something I wanted to do because I definitely wasn't going to be good enough to go straight to the NBL or somewhere in Europe or something. I was very raw, and honestly, I wasn't that talented. So the goal in mind was, maybe I get to a Division II school, kind of work my way up through the ranks in America, and somehow St. Mary's saw something in me and kind of just tipped the hat and said, right, like, we think you got something. Let's give it a crack. So yeah, I was sitting SATs around that time, like trying to prep myself to do it, but I honestly never thought that I'd be playing Division I basketball. And at that point in time, I was like, this is the craziest thing ever. Like, I've gotten to Division I basketball in college. Like, this must be as good as it gets.
That's wild, man. Because it's like your story is so similar to mine, where it's just like things happen, you take it, you run with it, you make the most of it. The next thing happens, you take it, you run with it, you make the most of it, and you just keep leveling up, and then you get to the top tier playing in the NBA like you are at the moment, man. Is there like, I mean, you look at your family. I think whenever I told my family I was coming to Australia to play AFL, and they were probably like, "What the hell is AFL?" First of all, but second of all, they had a bit of reserve, I guess, about me going overseas to play. Like, I don't know, be essentially looked after by other people. Like, did you have anyone there? Like, obviously you talk about that coach that recruited you. Do you have anyone that kind of took you in as a bit of like support over there that had Australian, I guess, like connection or something? Because I found it whenever I came here, I was really just on my own. Like, it was just, there was not really anyone I knew in the country. I didn't have any connection to anyone in the country, and I had to really make friends from scratch. And obviously the being with a team definitely helps. But was there anyone that kind of was that connector for you?
Well, we had my first year there. We had two other Australians on the team, and I was familiar with them, but wasn't really too close with them before going to St. Mary's. But I mean, mate, I hung out with them day and night, and we just like, it was just like a little Australian clique we had. And by my third year, we actually outnumbered the Americans. We had 8 Australians on our team in the third year at St. Mary's. So it was like, it was pretty wild and pretty rare timing to have them all there. But yeah, by the end of it, it was like we had a little, Aussie community within the team, and we'd all just hang out together, and that was it, mate. I'm going to be honest with you. I had pretty much 0 friends outside of the basketball team. Like, I was just, and that's kind of how it goes in college. Like, you just hang out with your team day and night, and you party with them, you go on the road and you play with them, and then, it's just like around the clock. And especially at that point in time when we went in, because we do summer school, there's no other students on campus. So you just get this like little clique going, and then you spend your whole year with them, and it's not too bad. Like, honestly, I really enjoyed it. So, yeah, those boys helped me through that first year a lot. But, by the end of it, it was like we pretty much had like a small country town living at St. Mary's.
Your little Australian community with accents everywhere. You would have been the kings of the town, I'm sure, just playing an Australian accent over at St. Mary's, I must say. Now, I've got to ask this, because whenever you get recruited to college, right? Now, you have to sell the experience of college because you're not getting paid there. It's a school you go to play basketball, and you also get education. Now, I was never fortunate enough to experience one of these, but the recruitment trips are always very interesting. Now, they take you out for a good time, right? They try to show you that the town has got some life to it, that playing here is going to be good fun for the next 4 years, whatever it might be. You get a college degree, but also maybe, have a bit of a enjoyable time away from the basketball court. Also, was there anything, I guess, you were probably on both sides, obviously the recruiting you whenever you got there, but also probably trying to recruit others to the basketball team once you were on the team. Is there anything you did specifically? I mean, I'm looking for party stories here. I'm going to be honest, Jock, of just something that's, because I've been through college. I've seen some of the stuff that happens, and I know not all of it we can talk about on the podcast, but I'm just trying to get a little snippet from you, brother.
Oh mate, I'm gonna have to disappoint you here. When I got there, it was break for the rest of the college, so it was literally just me and the boys at school. There was no one else there. But they definitely had told me stories about previous. They were like, they probably didn't like me that much, to be honest with you, because they were like, look, like all these other fellas that we bring in, like this is typically what we go and do. We go to parties, we set them up, blah blah blah. And for me, I rolled in there and I was pretty much, they were just like, here, look, we got nothing for you. So it was out to dinner with the coaches.
What?
I was out hanging out with a bunch of old men, and I was like, this doesn't feel right. Like, surely this isn't the right kind of way you sell college. But mate, that was as good as it got for me. So again, I had no options. So they really didn't have to sell me on too much.
That is insane. We had very different college experiences, Jock. Yeah,
exactly
I must ask though, because whenever you go to the US, right, and this is something I've learned in reverse, the culture is a little bit different. Now, the music they play, the things they pay attention to, very different, right? Bit more rap music and things along those lines, where I found it house music here in Australia, a lot of techno and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Was that something you got there and you were like, oh my gosh, like I was like one of the few white guys on the team. So I was the least hood of anyone there. And like, I kind of feel like sometimes I went in there and it was a real culture shock at times of some of the stuff out here. But was there anything, I guess, going to St. Mary's, what was the biggest thing that was a shock for you moving to the US and getting into to basketball over there?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely kind of the locker room chat, the music scene, all those typical things were just completely different. Also, like, I mean, maybe in college and a lot of the big party schools, like, they typically, at least what I found is like a lot of the guys kind of go out and they act cool, whereas in Australia it's let's go out and just see how, like, I'm going at my best mates to see how many drinks I can drink compared to you and just see who gets the most maggoted. So definitely went in there doing that, and everyone was a little bit like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, what is he doing? Just like off his chops at like the first party he's ever been to at school. So I definitely made a mess of myself like multiple times at St. Mary's, but I managed. One of my best mates now is an American from San Diego, and I fully converted him into an honorary Australian. He's like yourself, mate. Like he just loved the culture so much that I've got him doing like danger cans and smacking these beer bottles against his head and stuff. Like, and all these Americans are looking at us like, who are these guys? Probably explains why I had no mates, because I was acting up like this outside of the basketball team. But oh mate, it was such a laugh. So I used to really, really lean into that cultural difference and just act a fool. The entire 4 years I was acting like an absolute idiot. But yeah,
I can only imagine
there are some good stories there.
Yeah, I can imagine, because whenever I go back to America, I mean, I've got a bit of a hybrid accent now, and you still have a very strong Australian accent. I play up the Australian accent over there. Like it bodes well, gotcha. Jock. It bodes very well over there. Just in conversation, gotcha. Whatever it may be, people are just interested in an Australian accent because I just don't hear it very often. Now, were there times, I guess, whenever you first came there, you were like, okay, you got to try Vegemite. Like, no, we don't all ride kangaroos. There's not koalas everywhere. Did you have to give them the basics of what's going on in Australia? Because a lot of people over there are very ignorant of what's happening in this country.
Yeah, mate, all the time. Drop bears. If all, you're walking through the city, people think that you're just getting attacked by like snakes and spiders and stuff, and it's like you never see them. All that stuff is just like nonstop. And sometimes, I mean, look, a lot of the time I really milked it. And, even when we had this bloke, Evan Fitz, he ended up coming out to Australia and coming out to my farm with all my mates. And the whole time we were just like, right, let's commit to just like scaring him about drop bears. So like I fully set it in stone for 2 years. I was like, mate, drop bears are real, drop bears are real. And so we get to the farm and we're kind of walking through the bush and he's looking up the whole time. Yeah, so we fully committed to it, fully committed to the whole thing. But I mean, you have to, right? Like you got to make the most of the Australian and American differences. And look, there's probably things that I think about Americans to this day that people have told me that are just completely false. So shoes probably on the other foot as well.
I do find it amazing. They do think every single thing in this country kills everyone. And there are a lot of dangerous animals, but I think from Melbourne, Geelong area, Not nearly as many as probably up in northern Queensland. I will say there's not crocodiles roaming around like most people think. And sharks, yes, they're in the water, but they don't eat people on a daily basis. It's tough to explain that to Americans over there, but I want to go a little bit now away from the American experience. Like college, we could talk about that, but I think it'd be a little bit, we wouldn't be PC enough probably to be able to talk fully into it. No. Maybe one day, Jock, maybe one day whenever we're both retired.
Maybe one day, maybe off the record.
Off the record, maybe after dark or something. Now, we'll go into, you've gone and played in some crazy places. I've got here, you got Lithuania and Serbia. Now, I can't imagine ever in your life, coming from Geelong, you would have thought, I would be in a professional environment playing sport in Lithuania or Serbia. Now, a lot of people probably don't understand how you end up there. Like, I know there's the agency side of things. Like in 2018, went undrafted, and then you go over there to play to try to, I guess, increase your status in the basketball world to try to get picked up by an NBA team. Can you explain, I guess, how that works to someone who's ignorant and how that is? Like, it's very tough for people to understand exactly how do you get to the NBA and how hard it is to get to the NBA and how much, I guess, you have to do beforehand. And a lot of people go over to these Eastern European countries to be able to play, to get their, to get experience, to be able to kind of see themselves in front of NBA scouts and stuff. Like, what was your personal experience? Did you just put full faith in your agent to find someone that was able to find a team out in Serbia and Lithuania to be able to have you play?
Like, without getting too deep into the agency side of things, I initially put a lot of faith into my first group of agents. So pretty much like straight out of college, went and played in the summer league. So to take us back a step further, you finish your college season, you're pretty much straight on the road for a month. And you're traveling around, you're booking individual workouts with all of these NBA teams towards the end of their season. So right around now or next month, they start bringing in college guys to work them out against one another. You usually go in like a group of 6. So I did that for a month straight. I booked like 13 or 14 workouts across a month. So you can imagine that's a month on the road. You're living on the road, and it's, work out in Brooklyn on a Monday, travel Tuesday to Milwaukee, work out in Milwaukee on a Wednesday, and that is just a month straight. Didn't get back to school for a month. So did that. You kind of get a feel on which teams are interested, which teams are not, and your agents start having conversations with them around, will they draft you? So I had a bit of interest in the draft. I thought that I was going to be good because I was an All-American. My college career kind of spoke for itself. But what they fail to kind of tell you is that like your college career means nothing in the eyes of the professional league. So you can do all this stuff in college and they'll just be like, yeah, but does your game translate to the pros? And it really is like a different game. They just don't tell you that. So I go to the draft. The draft night comes. I'm back in Australia with my family and friends, and they're all around at the house. We all think that it's going to be life is good, and end up going undrafted. So that's like that was a brutal night. Thought that like my career was like over at that point. So, anyways, I get a call from the Atlanta Hawks, and they say we want to bring you in to go and play in our summer league team, and that's what I do. Now, same draft class as Trae Young, and so the whole summer league experience is centered around let's see how good we can make Trae Young and kind of get him, get a good feel for him in the NBA system. So that whole experience probably wasn't what I wanted from it, because there was like, maybe 10 shots to go around to players outside of their core 3. So end up starting for the Atlanta Hawks, and I literally averaged like 1.5 points and maybe 2 rebounds or something like that in 20 minutes, which is just embarrassing. So come out of that, like morale is very low. I ended up jumping in a car and meeting up with a mate, and we went, we just kind of road trips around America, not knowing what was going to be next. Get a call towards the end of that, and my agent says, we've got a contract off you from some joint in Italy. We got one for you from Serbia. Now, I had like a pretty good relationship with a good fella, or a really successful basketball player called David Anderson out of Australia. And I kind of lent on him a little bit and said, hey, mate, like, what do you think of these clubs? And he said, no brainer, go to Serbia. Like, Serbia is the place you want to be as a young basketball player. The club itself, Partizan, is legendary. You see these videos of basketball crowds lighting up flares, throwing them on the court, all the toilet paper, and that's them. Like, that is literally partisan. So I go to this environment and, like, it just slaps me in the face of, like, I've never been around such diehard, intense, passionate fan base that, like, I was in shock for a little while. And we had a coach there initially who wasn't really playing me. Now we got off to like a 2-11 start, which, in Europe is damn near like a death sentence. Like, they live and breathe for this stuff. So if you're losing, that's like they're losing, and they take that out on you. So, anyways, we fire him. We bring in this guy, Andre Trincheri, who's probably one of the most influential people in my basketball career, and he kind of changes the trajectory of my career entirely. And I can never forget it. We had this training one day where we had no coach at the time, but he was arriving at the end of training, and he pulls up and he says, "Right, I want to speak to each of you individually. Stick around. It'll be 5 minutes ahead." So one by one, they go up. Now, I'm a rookie, so I'm obviously at the end of the line. That's kind of how the basketball world works. And I'm at the very end of the line, and I walk into his office, and everyone's walking out of there like blue in the face. They're just like in shock, or they're red in the face and just really angry. There was like maybe two of us who came out of that like in a good spot. I walked in there expecting to be just like wrung out because I'd hardly played, and when I had played, I hadn't really played that well. And he said to me, "Mate, I've seen you play. I want to build the team around you." Is essentially the message that I got out of that meeting. And I was in shock. I was like, is this guy fucking crazy? Like, I've had a shocking start to my season. Like, he's going to put me in a terrible spot with the fans. Like, I was a little bit nervous. Anyways, we go on an absolute tear. We win the Serbian Cup. We make the playoffs for the first time in a couple of years. We just go on a rampage and have a great season. But the experience basketball-wise was next to none. It was just like still one of my most valued memories on the court was playing in front of those Serbian fans, and the passion that they show really trickled over into my game. Like, my game is predicated off high energy, high intensity. As you'll see, I run up and down this court screaming like a dickhead half the time, but that kind of comes from Serbia. That's really where that comes from. And when it was good, but when it was bad, mate. So they have this rivalry with Red Star out there, and we played against Red Star and we lost. But I had my best game of the season. This is like 3 games after this coach gets here. We lost to this other Serbian team straight out of Belgrade, and they were our biggest rivals. And I've had this great game. I think it's all good. I'm just going to go jump in the car, go home. I'm feeling good about myself. And one of my teammates is like, "Don't go outside. Like, wait till the fans completely clear out of there." And so I was like, "Mate, like, piss off. Like, I'm fine. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, I had a great game." Anyways, walk out the front, and there's just like 100 people walking around like through our car park. And I've already told this story before, and it's been out there. But like a bloke ends up like showing his. Like, he's showing his gun to me, and I'm just like, what is going on right now? Like, I've just had this game, and this is how you're treating me. And that was like the first experience of their passion for the sport, and it changed my perspective entirely. Like, just showed that like winning is all that matters, and that's kind of been my experience thus far. Now, that's kind of like how things go. So don't make the NBA, you get bumped to a low level in Serbia, or lower level in Serbia, and then you kind of have to build your way up through Europe. So I have this great season in Serbia. I've got stories on stories like that. But I end up, towards the end of the season, I start getting some interest from the NBA. Agency at the time, I don't want to badmouth them because I've already dealt with that, but we end up signing a deal in Lithuania behind closed doors. Nobody knows about it, not even the team, in Serbia. And it all goes really, really badly. So probably would have and should have been signed to an NBA roster out of that season, because I had such a great season in such a well-respected league in Europe. So it's like Euro Cup and Euro League are pretty much the top 2 leagues, as well as the NBL outside of the NBA. And I was in Euro Cup. So I was right there in like the 3rd best league, I'd say. So I had this great season there. I get interest from a EuroLeague club, which is like another great stepping stone, another legendary coach. And I also had some interest from the NBA, but I was so skeptical on whether or not the NBA was going to happen because of my experience from the past. But I was like, right, like I'm gonna sign with the Lithuanian team and have like a safety net there, and then I'll go to summer league. I'll play in summer league, and then hopefully sign a deal in the NBA. Now, we'd agreed to a deal with the Lithuanian team, and the Serbian team eventually finds out, and I'm injured at the time, and they're trying to force me to play through this injury. And I was like, guys, I can't play through this injury. Like plain and simple, I just cannot play through this. My ankle's completely stuffed. And they're like, you have to, or otherwise you have to stay in Serbia. You're not allowed to be around the team. You're not allowed to use their facilities, nothing like that. So I was essentially stuck in my apartment for like, I think it was like probably like 6 to 10 weeks roughly that I was there just like sitting on a bung ankle. And as you know, like that's really bad for the ankle as if you just fully immobilize it after a sprain. So I actually tear one of the 3 ligaments on the outside of my ankle completely. And I just don't get any treatment. So, anyways, my new agent kind of comes in and he's like, it was actually still the old group. They're like, right, we've gotten this team to let you go back to America and rehab your ankle. If you get it healthy before the season finishes, then you go straight back and you finish out the season. If not, then you stay there, play in the NBA, and they'll get like, that's a good look for them. Anyways, I'm bags packed, ready to roll, and my agent gives me a call and he's like, hey, you need to like pack your bags now, get on a flight, like some shit's going down. The club has kind of found out about it, blah, blah, blah. Let's get you out of there right now before they come and find you and figure this out. So I'm bags packed in 25 minutes, like full year's worth of my life into 2 bags in 25 minutes out the front door on a plane. I'm thinking I'm going back to America. And I get to the airport, my agent calls me, he's like, hey, we're going to actually fly you to Lithuania to do your physical for that contract, and then we'll bring you back to America. It's a really long-winded story, mate. But essentially, I jump on a plane from Serbia to Poland, Warsaw, Poland, I think it is, and then connect there to Lithuania. But as I land in Poland, I open up my phone and I have like, I couldn't even tell you. I've never experienced anything like that many notifications just going through my phone. It must have been 1,000 notifications damn near, probably an exaggeration. But I'm like, what is going on? I'm looking through my phone, and the Lithuanian team has caught wind that I'm coming to Lithuania. It was meant to be a secret, and they've pumped out, we have signed Jock Landale, very excited to have him on our team, blah, blah, blah. And the Serbian team's like, hang on, like, we've not agreed to this. Like, how have you signed this contract and not told us? So then they called my agents and they're like, get him back here. Like, he's not allowed to leave. He's sticking around here and he's going to play. And I just called my agents and I was like, this is like, we've got to figure this out. Like, I'm not going back. I essentially said to them, I was like, I'm not going back. They're just going to keep me hostage there for another 10 weeks. And at the time I was really dealing with some bad thoughts and dark side of the mental headspace that I was like, I literally cannot go back and sit in that apartment in isolation for any more time. So I do 2 days in Lithuania whilst they figure that out, and then go back to San Diego where I rehab with my best mate down there and just kind of do my own thing. And so we finally get that deal with Serbia sorted out. But essentially my buyout goes from, it was about $100K, which is like on the lower level, up to $750,000, just like that, like because of such a botched situation. Bit of unluck. I don't know, like we just didn't have much luck on our side, but we get there, the buyout goes through the roof, and that's a big piece of the puzzle, because essentially I have this great innings in summer league with the Milwaukee Bucks. I'm one of the best 5 players named in that competition, and I'm like, mate, I'm on. Like, we're having like there are conversations and little drips of information coming out that like he's going to go to the NBA. Anyways, that's before they find out that my buyout's 750,000 euros, and it's euros, by the way. So, anyways, every team after that is like, we're not going to pay you
Yeah,
750,000 euros for you to sign you on a minimum contract, because your minimum contract actually becomes like a $2.5 million contract at that point. So it's like, why would we pay for that? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Anyways, I go through the World Cup. There are dates in our contracts that you have to kind of sign these deals before. So I have all these dates in my contracts. Those dates come and go, and I'm locked into Lithuania at this point. I have this phenomenal World Cup series. A couple of the boys on the team at the time are saying, yeah, the coaches want you, the front office wants you, like, let's make it happen. And then I'm like, oh, mate, they're not going to take me with this buyout hanging over my head. And they make the call, buyouts there, and they're like, yeah, no, we're not doing it. So anyways, I go have a good season in Lithuania. Pretty much I was on a 2-year deal in Lithuania, and COVID hits halfway through the season. So I come back to Australia to spend time with my family. And, at that point, again, the mental headspace is just completely stuffed. And I'm kind of getting to an age where I'm like, I've got to make this NBA transition happen. Otherwise, it's just going to like float by. So we have a conversation with Lithuania, and I'm like, I can't come back. So again, I break my contract. Like, not a very good bloke in that regard for the first couple of years of my career. But I say to him, I'm like, yeah, like, I'm not coming back. And then, like, what do I got to do? Essentially had to hand back every cent that I'd made from them, and was broke. So gave it all back.
Over to Europe for a few years, and you've come back with $0, and then everyone couldn't buy you out, and you've gone, shit, I essentially have to start back over to try to make it to the NBA.
Yeah. So kind of that all happens, and then luckily pick up a contract with Melbourne United, have a great year there, and they really looked after me well, and then, come out to America and again, was looking, there was a few like opportunities throughout my time in the NBL that just never stuck. And that's what a lot of it is it's conversations, it's false promises. And then there's one that comes through and you finally lock it in. So, had a great Olympics, was told after the NBA that it was probably going to happen, had a great Olympics and just locked it in whilst I was there. And then from there it was, straight to the NBA. And then you think like, right, I've made it to the NBA, like life's good. And then you finish your first season, you get traded around 3 times, and that's like, we have no idea where we're going to be. So, it's just like always moving, mate. But yeah, long-winded version of that story and explanation, but that's essentially how the business has worked in my
I want to dissect it a bit further because there's a lot there. Like you've obviously done the Serbia, the Lithuania. There's a lot of contractual talks that a lot of people probably don't understand how crazy that can be, and being essentially moved to a different country and then things being out of your control of, people releasing information about you that you thought was under wraps, and, the legalities around that. And you're sitting there stuck in a country, not sure what you're going to do. I can only imagine like being so far away from home, the uncertainty and stuff that's going around your mind at that point, whenever you just got into Lithuania and Serbia, and you've obviously said the craziness of their fans and everything along those lines. Like, you're in Lithuania, you're about to go back to America, and then you essentially come back to Australia after COVID happens, after going to Lithuania. Now you do play in the NBL and you play for Melbourne United, you actually win a championship. And not to pump your tires up a bit, but you're the NBL Grand Final MVP and then Melbourne United MVP award. So it's safe to say you had a pretty damn good year. Now, was that like, I don't know, because you imagine all the stuff that's happening in the world at that point. You'd been through kind of the ringer with the situation of being overseas, and this is every athlete's worst nightmare. We've got a kid on our or a man on our team, Tom Wilson, who's been through something very similar in Europe. And
Tommy played at Partizan. Tommy played at the Serbian club I was at.
What was he part of? Was he part of the same club?
Same club in Serbia. Ask him about it. I've heard stories of his experience where apparently you get to a game and your jersey's laid out, and they would just stop laying his jersey out. They just wanted him to leave. So they tried to essentially kick him out of the club. But yeah, I've heard stories about Tom because he was at the exact same club I was at. It's
a ruthless industry. I think like whenever I came to Australia, I was a bit reserved on whether or not I should come over here because I thought it might have the same situation that you've kind of had over there, not knowing what to expect, going over there a bit blind and then trying to figure it out. And if it doesn't work out perfectly, you're essentially stuck there. And like you said, the fans and everyone else is a bit kind of crazy in that sense. Don't get me wrong, Collingwood fans are crazy, but I think they'd let me leave the country. But it is a stressful time, I can only imagine, in life. But then you come back to you talked about that mental health side, and then being able to come back home around friends and family. Like, was that just like whenever you landed in Australia after that experience, was it just a sigh of relief and just a breath of fresh air just to be able to get back to your home country to play in the NBL? Like obviously NBA is still at this point what you want to get to, but to be able to get back after this crazy, hectic, probably not best scenario experience you've had, now being able to be back home and just almost reset to have another crack at trying to make it to the NBA?
Yeah, mate, it was like bang on. It was a breath of fresh air. My mental space was so bad through those 2 years that, especially in Serbia, I got to the point where, like, because it was brand new to me, I'd never dealt with any anxiety or anything like depression or anything like that before. So when I was there, it was new to me. I didn't know how to deal with it, and I didn't really reach out for too much help early on. And eventually I told my family halfway through the year. They came out and visited me for the first time in like December or something like that, and I had them there for about 2 weeks, and they left, and that like period of them just leaving was like one of the darkest times of my life. And I had to call them and be like, I hate to do this to you and pull you guys out of your own life, but I need one of you over here at all times because I just can't be alone. Like, I'm scared to be alone at this point. So I kind of get through that year and again, like super scared to go back to Europe because I'm like, I just don't know if I can handle being alone, and I don't want my parents to, like, you know, because what happened is mum would come out for a month and then dad would come out for a month. So they're not seeing each other for, you know, a couple of weeks on end. And then my sister would come out for a month. And so I was pulling them out of their own lives to just help me get through that period. And like, I owe them a shitload for that. But, you know, Lithuania comes around and I'm like, oh, I just don't know if I can do this because I'm scared to be alone. So kind of have like a pretty stern word with myself, and I'm like, no, like, I'm going to get through this 10-month period solo. I need to prove to myself that I can do this, because if I can't do this, then like, what's the point in even playing anymore? Like, that's kind of the conversation I was having with myself, is if I can't get through this time period solo and like hack it out to do something that I'm supposed to love at the time, like, what's the point? So I get through that 7-month period. I have a visitor or two with a couple of mates, but for the most part, I'm solo out there. And I think the thing that people don't understand is kind of how rough and tough the coaches are out there. So you go to work every day and you are just getting belittled and essentially, you know, bullied. And anyways, that kind of all happens, and I get back to Australia and I'm just like, why would I ever leave? Like, why? I get back during COVID, and I'm like, why would I leave this space? So, I spend a month and a half up on the farm with my family during the initial stages of COVID, just, you know, fishing the days away. Essentially, I was working out a little bit, but definitely blew out with all the beers that I was drinking on the river. And then, you know, come back down to Melbourne to kind of really start getting stuck into it, because there's rumblings that I could be jetting off to the US. So I start getting back in shape and you know, lucky enough to meet my wife to be. And it was just like another one of those things where it was like, why would I leave? Like, I've met her, you know, super happy in Australia. I've got my mates around. I've got all of that around. And that's kind of what sparked the interest of, well, if the NBA doesn't happen, like, I'm playing the NBL for sure. So, you know, that's where I had to buy myself out of my contract. And I was just, because of my experiences out there, I think it would be a lot different now having someone with me, obviously, but because of my experiences for the past 2 years out there, I was like, I'm willing to give everything I've got to get out of that contract and go and play in the NBL. And on top of that, the NBL was doing a really good job of producing players to go and play in the NBA. So, you know, I worked out with the Melbourne United boys for essentially the whole time that COVID was going on. And some of my best mates nowadays are from that team, and Chris Goulding, Dave Barlow, a couple of the other boys. And mate, it was the best decision I ever made, spending, you know, year and a half back in Australia, you know, meeting the missus, hanging out with all the fellas and reconnecting with the family was just the best thing that could have happened. And then fell in love with the sport again. Like, that's the one thing that I'm super appreciative of, is those days out in Europe, it was really hard to get up and about for these games and enjoy while I was there, because I started blaming basketball for all of my mental struggles at the time. So, get out of there, go back to Australia, learn to love everything again, and life's been pretty good since then.
Yeah, it's beautiful, man. I think you always talk about the people you surround yourself and the rocks of friendships and partnerships and family and stuff like that, and how it can, I guess, give you so much energy in what you do for a living, like in basketball or football or sport or work, wherever it may be. It's having, I think, whenever you find that person that supports you, and no matter what, in that manner, like it just makes you go to another level. And whatever you do, to be honest. And it's cool. Yeah. So giving back to a bit of the career and stuff, like you go back to Melbourne, you do that, Melbourne United, killer year, absolutely smash it. And then you go to Tokyo for the Olympics. Now, Tokyo and the Olympics, wild time. Absolutely wild experience. Like, did you show up there and there was just like, what was it like? You walk me through it, because I think I've always been interested to know the details of what was happening over there, because it was so unique of a situation that will never probably happen again in our lifetimes, hopefully. And the whole country was shut down, but sport was still going on. And like there was, I guess, anger with some of the people there, and then other people were like excited that something was happening. Like, what was your personal experience? It would have been Olympics unlike any other that will ever happen again.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll take it back a step further to our like pre-Olympic kind of campaign. So finished the NBL season. I have 4 days to celebrate that championship, and I jet off to LA. Touchdown in LA, and we do like 3 days in LA with the squad. And we jump on a bus and we go to Vegas. So we took our camp out in Vegas, and the first day we get there, they essentially, like, our life in Vegas was on 2 floors in the hotel. They blocked off for our squads, the men's and women's, and we weren't allowed outside of that, because the Olympic Committee said to essentially the whole world, they said, if you have COVID within 2 weeks in the build up to getting to the Olympics, your whole squad retires.
Jeez.
So if anyone on our team had COVID, the whole team gets taken out of the Olympics, and that's how strict they were being. So we're in Vegas, possibly the worst place in the world to be for COVID reasons, with all the nightclubs, the gambling, all that, and we couldn't do any of it. So it was hotel room, gym, back to we had a hangout area, all the boys would sit there, a couple of bottles of wine, play some ping pong, whatever it was, and then training. And it was just the whole time we were like that for 2 weeks inside of a Vegas hotel. Anyways, the whole, like, everyone was dreading the travel to the Olympics, because Vegas to, I think we were Vegas direct to Tokyo, maybe. Wow. I can't even remember, but I know it was LA. Sorry, it was LA direct to Tokyo. So we jump on a plane, we go back to LA, fly to Tokyo, which is like, I want to say it's like 18 hours or something like. Oh, maybe not that much. Maybe like 14 hours or something. No, not us. We're on, but like nobody's flying at this point, so it's essentially a private jet.
Yeah, true.
So we jump on a plane, we get there, and we're dreading this because they've told us, like, once you get there, you've got to get screened for COVID. And when they screen, they mean go through this brutal like process of vaccination reports, like all of this stuff. Then you have to go do the spit and swab. And we do that, and then they put us down just into a random terminal, and they're like, right, wait here and we'll get your results. Mate, we waited in that terminal for 9.5 hours.
Oh.
We sat in that fucking terminal for 9.5 hours, and ours was the longest period. Now, I heard America breeze through there in about 1:45.
With the cashies.
We were there for 9.5 hours we were there. So anyways, we get out of there, jump on a bus, and we go to the village, and everyone's like asleep on this bus, just dead. Like, we were hacky-sacking in the airport to try and kill time. It was a pisser. But get to the village, and they are essentially like, right, these are your hotels, this is where you're staying, jump in these like little golf carts, and they take you to your dormitory or wherever the country's staying. mate, we pull up into this joint at probably like, I don't know, it's probably 2 a.m., 3 a.m. or something like that. And we walk into our little room, and we're sleeping on cardboard boxes.
Oh.
So that's the first thing of like, what have we gotten ourselves into? So sleeping on cardboard boxes with this paper thin mattress. From there, it was just a bizarre experience. Like we do obviously I've not done another Olympics yet, but it'll be good to have a comparison in a year's time. But we roll in, and it's you can't mingle with other countries, like full stop. You can't spend time with them, nothing like that, because they're really trying to just make sure no COVID is spread. The dining room, they've got like plastic boards up in front of your face, so you're all sectioned off in your own cubicles, like trying to yell over the plastic to the person in front of you to have a conversation. It's bizarre. You've got to do COVID testing every now and again, like to really be sure. You go to practice, and they've completely sectioned every court off from one another, so no teams are allowed to cross over whatsoever. You COVID screen in and out, like temperature check and all that, in and out of the village. Like it was just bizarre. But the weirdest two things were, the opening ceremony, like bizarre. We walked through this humongous stadium, straight through the guts of it, like all of the cool things happening on either side of us. But you look out at the stands, and there's like 15, 20 people kind of just like spotted around this stadium, and you're just like, this just doesn't feel right. Like no roar of a crowd. They might have had a roar of a crowd playing on the speaker actually, but there's just no crowd kind of like yelling. They've got all this cool lights going on and stuff, but like you literally see like one person in one section. The next section there's maybe one up the top, one down the bottom, and it just looks like bizarre. It looked like little flies on the wall or something like that. So that was really strange. And then the other weird thing was like, so the basketball stadium was probably like 35 minutes outside of the village. The weirdest part was jumping on that, going and driving along these freeways and looking down into like Tokyo, and the streets are just naked, like not a person. This is fucking Tokyo. So we get to this, on top of that, you get to the stadium, and the stadium's empty. Now, I was used to that at that point, because the NBL, we played pretty much most of our final series with no fans. But mate, there was just like, it was nothing. There was nobody around. You forgot what a crowd felt like. You forgot what interaction with other people felt like. And from what I've gathered, like most of the fun in the Olympics is, you swap pins with other countries and stuff, and you just weren't really allowed to do that because you couldn't mingle with them. So, yeah, it was a really bizarre setup where you've got all these people in a community, but you can't actually speak to any of them. So yeah, it was really strange.
Did you feel like maybe the strange experience and the inability, I guess, to be able to interact with other people? Like everyone talks about that Olympic culture of basketball, and what they've been able to create there is why it's so successful. Do you think like that? Maybe the situation almost added to how close the team actually is, because I feel like everyone's so supportive of every other person that's on there, and that's unlike, like USA, it's pretty individualistic, and they just go together for one part of the year and that's it, and they move on. Like I feel like the Aussie team, like they're actually like friends and mates, and they want to go wild together as a team, 100%. And that's what makes it such a good, like strong side. And that I can only imagine. I'm not going to speak for yourself; you can speak for it, but like that experience of just the chaos and the 9.5 hours in the airport and like everything else that just added up to it. Yeah. Like you essentially get to know everyone as mates at that point, because you're spending so much time together.
100%. And you're just kind of telling yourself the whole time, like, it's going to be a heck of a story once we come out of this thing with a medal. Like, imagine what we'll be able to tell our kids, what we went through to get this, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, exactly right. Australia had, they'd done our setup really well, but essentially downstairs, you come back from the dining room along this straight road, and then you kind of take like a real shallow turn, and there's like this grass area. And Australia had set up like a little coffee shop right there. So everyone, you come back from your training, you come back from breakfast, you come back from your event, pretty much from like 7 a.m. onwards until like 10 o'clock at night. That little area is just like packed with people having a coffee, having a drink, whatever it might be. Now, it was a dry campus. That was also bizarre. Like they didn't want alcohol on because you couldn't get it from the outside world. I'm sure people snuck it in, but and I mean we certainly did on the last night. But yeah, it was like the whole time that little area was just pumping for Australia with coffees, and then they had 3 screens going with the various events on it, and that's where we all really mingled with one another within Australia. And I feel as though that we all hear about the stories in the Olympics, how it's all about going out chasing tail and all of that kind of stuff. And I feel as though because that experience was taken away for the most part, you couldn't go and experience getting to know somebody from another country or whatever. The whole Australian community really became tight, and we were all just hanging out with one another, getting around one another on the big screen. And the prime example of that was we came back from winning our bronze medal. We're walking through the rain with we had some hilltop hoods or something going on this big speaker. Boys are walking through the mate. It was like something out of a fucking movie. I remember being kind of at the back of the pack, double parked with 2 long neck Asahis or something like that. And our young buck at the time, Josh Green's got the speaker over his shoulder. We're walking down to hilltop hoods, and rain's pissing down, and you just kind of see the lights from around the corner, and then there's just fucking 100 people just standing there roaring for us, let's fucking go. And then we just slam the speakers down, and we just start and there's a video that went out about us, and we were all just down there dancing to this music, and oh mate, just the night just launched after that, because we were one of the last events to finish. So we finished that, we come back to this warm welcome from Australia, and it was just on for fucking young and old after that. It was unreal.
There's a video of Paddy Mills who's having a few drinks and stuff, having a grand old time. I'll never forget, because I'm you never see that. You never see that side of him. But
and that's rare from Paddy, mate. That is rare from Paddy. So when you finally get Paddy, I have got some great Paddy Mills stories that he won't want me to tell, but when you get that out of Paddy, he can go with the best of them. So that was high level. For the most part, everyone was bloody dialed in, and even when we were hanging out and having free time, we were typically in our own little clique. We were all so dialed in that we were just nah, the partying and stuff can wait. We need to get this medal now. This is our year to get this medal, and we're not going to let it slip. So yeah, no, we were pretty locked in, but it's a fucking good time. It is a good time, and I'm pumped for Paris.
Oh, Paris is going to be unreal. Now, you've got a bit of a rivalry going with the U.S. I feel like people here just want to beat the shit out of the U.S. And you did beat America here in Melbourne.
Yes.
I was at that game, and shit, that was awkward for me. I was coming that much trash talk all the way out of that joint. Well, I'm half Australian now. I've got dual citizenship, but people drilled me after that, just saying I was a terrible human. But it's a bit of a rivalry now. Obviously, America's got a strong hold on the basketball side of things, but Australia's really pushing them and taking them to the limit. Now, have you been able to train with the team together since? Are you kind of getting in the point now, you're a year out, where you're now kind of getting your mind ready for that side of things and really prepping to hopefully win, go 2 further and maybe win a gold medal in this Olympic games coming up?
For sure, that's the plan. No, we haven't had any chance to get together and practice. That kind of happens this off season. So this off season, we've got the World Cup, and the World Cup is, whilst it's a big deal for us, it's a little bit of a tune up for the Olympics. So, we come together in Australia this off season, and I think we're going up to Cairns for our camp for 2 weeks. There'll be a bit of a selection camp for a few days, and then we'll put together a bit more of a camp with the squad itself. Really piece it together, and then we come back to Melbourne and we'll run a couple games at Rod Laver Arena, and then we jet off for the World Cup. So the World Cup's really, it's a chance to get to know one another and gain a little bit of that camaraderie that you have in the years prior. And look, a lot of the players are mainstays. We all know how to play with one another, and it's really easy to play with one another. Is the thing that people probably don't realise, is the way that we play as an Australian national team is really, really tough, and sharing the ball and all of that stuff. And it's never about one bloke. So it becomes really, really easy to gel, and that's what you find in camp. You walk in there and you're just feels like I've been playing with these blokes for years. So. The World Cup really is that time to get familiar with one another again and kind of get on track.
There's rumors there's going to be some big superstars coming to Australia, given the fact that's in the time zone of kind of similar time zone as to Japan, I think, where the World Cup's going to be played. And Tom will tell what big names come around and what big teams come out here. But we'll get into the next side of things. Like we haven't even talked about it, Matt. Your NBA career. Like what are you doing now? Yeah. You're playing for the Phoenix Suns, which is a hell of an accomplishment, and you're on a superstar list of a team. I mean, you've got people all in that: Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Chris Paul, DeAndre Payton. Like there's DeAndre Ayton. There's a lot of people there that are the mainstays, well-known people in the NBA circles. How is it now being on a team that has superstars surrounded yourself? Like, do you kind of feel like you got to play up to that level, of these people that have been around for a long time and played a lot of NBA All-Star games and things along that nature?
Yeah, for sure. There definitely is a little bit of added pressure to keep up with the best of them, especially when you're trying to win a championship. But at the same time, like, mate, some of the easiest basketball I've ever played in regards to like how many open shots I'm able to get in the game, because I'm just the bum from Australia who's like on this team trying to just like fill in the blanks, and that everything is directed at how do we stop Kevin Durant, how do we stop Devin Booker, how do we stop Chris Paul, how do we stop DeAndre Ayton. And so you throw me out there with, a lot of the times my rotations are with Kevin and Book. And it's just like everything gets, everyone's looking at them, and I just kind of like find my way through the gaps. And that's where I'm really at my best is when I'm able to just kind of like be an intangibles guy. And that's really played into my strengths this year, and I think that's why I've had such a good season is that I've been able to play with such high caliber players such as these two, who are willing to move off the ball and get other people involved, and they kind of let the game come to them, whereas a lot of superstars will really try and force the point and carry a team. Like Book and KD, we know they're going to get theirs no matter what, but they're also super willing to be like, no, right, here it is, like, go do your thing as well. So, mate, it's been the perfect storm. I probably wasn't meant to be here at the start of the year. Came in and really impressed the crap out of them from day one. And as soon as I got traded here, I was like, right, I'm going in to prove my case and let them know that, like, I'm here to stay. I want to stay. So did a great job of that through training camp, was just playing at the peak of my career at that point. And, earn their trust. And I think that's super hard to do on a contending team, is to be essentially a brand new player in the NBA and come in and earn the trust of the coach and your teammates to, do what I've done this year. So I'm pumped. Job's definitely not over yet, but I'm in a really good spot for right now, and I think the team's really starting to put it together, and hopefully we can make a huge push through the playoffs.
It's exciting times, man. It's a credit to you, because I don't think a lot of people quite understand how hard it is to break it into the NBA and play well in the NBA and get that trust of a team. Like it's not an easy thing. If you're a superstar, maybe, but like whenever you've got to work your ass off to get to that point to be trusted by a coach, it's something very hard. I've known a lot of people have tried to do it and haven't been successful, but it's amazing to see good people like yourself, put in the time, put in the effort, and be able to represent Australia on the global level. Like I don't think people realize how big it is what you're doing over there, especially here in Australia. And it's a credit to you, man. And I'm stoked, man. It's going to be excuse my French, but it's going to be a fucking good playoff series. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, mate, it's going to be good. It's a bit stiff that we get paired up with arguably one of the other best two teams in the Western Conference, but Clippers are going to be tough, man. They're a heck of a team, and if they get Paul George back, it'll be a serious battle. So, I'm excuse my French, I'm fucking pumped. I think I probably should have said excuse my French a few more times this podcast, but it's going to be unreal to get to do it here in Phoenix, which arguably top 3-4 fan bases, and I'm not doing that to earn the love of the fans or anything like that, but they are fucking mental when they want to be. So to be able to do it here for up to 28 games is awesome, and then to go to the big scene in LA and do it there for a first round of the playoffs. Like, this is my first playoffs ever, and this is what I get to do. It's yeah, very, very excited and appreciative and just stoked with the opportunity.
The absolute pinnacle, man. And we're excited for you. We're all cheering you on or rooting. I don't know if you can say rooting you on nowadays.
We might be cutting it close on that one.
I think maybe you could get away with it being in America now, but I can't do it here in Australia. But we'll be cheering you on, legend. It's exciting times for you. Exciting time in your life, man. And for myself, I'm sure everyone else here, we just want to wish you all the best. It's pretty amazing, like I said, what you've done, and we're super proud of you, and I want to wish you all the best with the final series to come.
Appreciate it, mate. Thanks for having me on.